The palace shimmered, an impossible structure of polished obsidian and swirling, bioluminescent flora. It was a monument to the Xylar dynasty, a testament to their power and, more subtly, to their boredom. Prince Xylar reclined on a levitating chaise lounge, his 6 eyes scanning the endless holographic displays with a distinct lack of interest. He was a creature of exquisite, if unsettling, beauty by his species standards, tall, slender, with skin like liquid mercury and antennae that pulsed with a faint, internal light. But his beauty was marred by an almost perpetual expression of disdain, a simmering contempt that seemed to encompass everything around him. He was known throughout the galaxy, or at least the more privileged parts of it, for his frivolousness, his cruelty disguised as wit, and his uncanny ability to orchestrate elaborate, often humiliating, practical jokes. The upcoming political marriage was, to Xylar, the ultimate joke. His species, the Krill, were at a delicate juncture. Their hyper-advanced technology was starting to falter, their resources dwindling, and their political influence waning. Earth, a relatively young and boisterous member of the galactic community, possessed resources the Krill desperately needed, and a burgeoning technological sector that showed promise. A marriage alliance was proposed, a symbolic merging of two disparate cultures, designed to foster cooperation and mutual benefit. Xylar, of course, was chosen as the groom. As the eldest son, the responsibility fell to him. He saw it as an unbearable imposition. He held humans in utter contempt. He considered them loud, primitive, and, most offensively, physically repulsive. Their soft, fleshy bodies, their lack of iridescent scales, their limited sensory range, it all disgusted him. The thought of sharing his life, even superficially, with one of these creatures was almost unbearable. And so, the joke was conceived. Xylar, in a moment of calculated malice, decided he would not simply marry a human. He would marry the most undesirable human he could find. He tasked his aides with scouring the Earth databases, searching for someone who embodied everything he found repulsive. Someone fat. He gathered his inner circle, a collection of sycophants and fellow-board aristocrats, and revealed his plan. They chuckled, a chorus of high-pitched, grating sounds that echoed through the palace. The idea of the proud Prince Xylar shackled to a globular human was simply too delicious. It would send a clear message to Earth: we tolerate you, but we certainly don't respect you. The search narrowed, and one name surfaced repeatedly: Beatrice. Her file was riddled with what the Krill considered imperfections. Her BMI was alarmingly high, her facial features deemed unremarkable, and her social media presence, while surprisingly witty, was largely ignored. By Krill standards, she was the epitome of undesirability. But Beatrice possessed something that the Krill, in their arrogance, completely overlooked: intelligence. A sharp, analytical mind, hidden behind a self-deprecating humor and a quiet demeanor. She was a brilliant scientist, ostracized by her peers for her unconventional theories and her unwillingness to conform to societal expectations. The news of the honor of marrying Prince Xylar was delivered to Beatrice with a mixture of excitement and thinly veiled pity. The Earth government, desperate to secure the alliance, presented it as a grand opportunity, a chance to bridge the gap between two worlds. Beatrice listened, her expression unreadable, a flicker of something akin to amusement in her eyes. She accepted. And now, a brief interlude. If you are enjoying this tale of intergalactic intrigue and unexpected alliances, please consider subscribing to our channel. We have many more exciting HFY stories waiting to be discovered, stories that celebrate the resilience, ingenuity, and surprising strength of humanity. Your support helps us bring these stories to life. Now, back to the narrative. 673 words. Beatrice, initially stunned by the alien prince's offer, exhibited a composure that surprised even herself. A flicker of something unreadable danced in her eyes, a spark of cunning perhaps, before she calmly accepted the proposal. It wasn't the reaction anyone expected, least of all Prince Xylar, who anticipated tears or outrage, not quiet acquiescence. Her reasons remained a mystery, shrouded in a veil of stoicism that only deepened the intrigue surrounding her. Was she truly accepting this cruel fate, or did she have a plan of her own, a hidden agenda masked by her placid exterior? The Earth government, upon learning of Beatrice's acceptance, was a mixture of relief and profound unease. Securing the intergalactic alliance was paramount, a strategic imperative that outweighed almost any cost. Yet, the potential sacrifice of one of their own weighed heavily on their collective conscience. Were they sending Beatrice to her doom, a lamb to the slaughter in the opulent halls of an alien court? They could only hope that her quiet strength would somehow see her through, that she possessed a resilience they had yet to fully appreciate. Secretly, contingency plans were drawn, escape routes envisioned, though the feasibility of such interventions remained highly questionable. Earth could not afford to jeopardize the treaty, but neither could it abandon one of its citizens to blatant abuse. While Xylar's court prepared for a spectacle of humiliation, Beatrice engaged in a different kind of preparation altogether. There were no frantic attempts to alter her appearance, no desperate diets or cosmetic procedures. Instead, she immersed herself in the study of Xylar's culture, dissecting their history, their customs, their social hierarchies. She sought to understand their weaknesses, their vulnerabilities, the hidden fault lines beneath the veneer of their sophisticated society. She learned their language, not just the formal pronouncements but the subtle nuances, the unspoken cues that revealed the truth behind the carefully constructed facade. Her preparation was not physical, but intellectual, a strategic deployment of knowledge as her primary weapon. The journey to Xylar's home planet was a stark contrast between Beatrice's quiet resolve and the alien landscape unfolding around her. The starship hummed with advanced technology, transporting her across vast interstellar distances, yet her focus remained inward, sharpening her mind, steeling her resolve. As she gazed out at the swirling nebulae and the unfamiliar constellations, she felt a sense of detachment, as if she were already an observer, a detached analyst of the events about to unfold. The alien environment, with its strange gravity and shimmering flora, seemed almost surreal, a stage set for a drama she was only beginning to comprehend. Her first impressions of Xylar's planet were a mix of awe and subtle revulsion. The architecture was breathtaking, soaring spires of crystal and metal that defied gravity, reflecting the light in dazzling displays. Yet, beneath the beauty lay a palpable sense of decadence, a pervasive atmosphere of cruelty that seemed to permeate every aspect of their society. The opulence was excessive, the extravagance bordering on grotesque, a stark contrast to the poverty and suffering she sensed lurking in the shadows. It was a world of extremes, of unimaginable wealth and abject misery, a society ripe for upheaval. As she was paraded through the alien city, Beatrice overheard snippets of conversation, whispers and judgments directed at her appearance. The alien population, accustomed to their own slender, androgynous forms, regarded her with a mixture of curiosity and open disdain. Fat, they hissed in their sibilant language, unattractive, a disgrace. The words stung, but Beatrice refused to betray any sign of emotion. She had anticipated this, prepared for the barbs and the insults. It was merely more information, another data point in her ever-growing analysis of this alien world. She knew that her true battle would not be fought with weapons, but with her intellect, her wit, and her unwavering determination to expose the rot beneath the glittering surface. 658 words. The wedding ceremony was a spectacle, a dizzying array of alien sights and sounds that assaulted Beatrice's senses. The air thrummed with an energy she couldn't quite decipher, a blend of anticipation and barely concealed disdain. Xylar's species, the krill, were adorned in shimmering fabrics that seemed to shift and change color with every movement, their tall, slender bodies draped in jewels that pulsed with an inner light. The architecture was equally extravagant, towering spires of polished obsidian reaching towards a sky that swirled with hues Beatrice had never seen before. From her vantage point, standing beside Xylar on a raised platform, Beatrice could see the assembled krill nobles, their faces a study in cold indifference. Their eyes, large and multifaceted, seemed to dissect her, cataloging every perceived flaw. She knew what they saw, a human woman, considered fat by their standards, an anomaly in their perfectly sculpted world. The whispers were constant, a low hum of judgment that followed her every step. Xylar, for his part, seemed determined to make the ordeal as unpleasant as possible. He barely acknowledged her presence, his gaze fixed on the crowd with a look of bored contempt. When he did speak, his words were laced with sarcasm, barely audible but clearly intended to wound. "Enjoying the spectacle, human?" he murmured, his voice dripping with disdain. "I trust you find our customs enlightening." Beatrice refused to give him the satisfaction of a reaction. She maintained her composure, her face a mask of serene indifference. Inside, however, a fire was slowly building. The wedding vows were a bizarre and archaic affair, a series of pronouncements in a language that sounded like liquid metal. The krill priest, a gaunt figure draped in shimmering robes, intoned the words with a solemnity that seemed utterly at odds with the circumstances. The vows emphasized obedience and subservience, reinforcing the power imbalance between Xylar and his bride. Beatrice listened intently, committing every word to memory. She understood that knowledge was power, and she intended to use every weapon at her disposal. As the priest reached the climax of the ceremony, he gestured towards Xylar, prompting him to place a ceremonial circlet upon Beatrice's head. Xylar hesitated for a moment, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. Then, with a deliberate flourish, he slammed the circlet onto her head, the force of the impact jarring her slightly. It was a small act of aggression, a subtle reminder of his dominance. But as he stepped back, Beatrice performed her own subtle act of defiance. As Xyler turned away, Beatrice subtly dropped a small device on the floor, using the bottom of her dress to cover her actions. No one noticed, but the device would send an audio recording of everything happening on the platform back to Earth. The wedding feast was even more excruciating than the ceremony. The Krill nobles openly mocked her, their laughter echoing through the vast hall. The food was alien and unappetizing, a bizarre assortment of textures and flavors that made Beatrice's stomach churn. Xyler sat at the head of the table, surrounded by his sycophantic friends, their faces alight with cruel amusement. He raised his glass in a mock toast, his eyes fixed on Beatrice. To the happy couple, he drawled, his voice dripping with sarcasm. May their union bring prosperity to us all. Beatrice met his gaze, her expression unreadable. She knew that this was just the beginning. The Krill thought they were humiliating her, but they had no idea what she was truly capable of. The joke, she thought, was on them. The wedding feast continued, and Beatrice endured. She listened to the cruel jokes and mean-spirited judgments with remarkable poise, even as her anger grew. She knew that her time would come. And when it did, the Krill would learn that underestimating a fat human woman was a grave mistake. The feast stretched on through the alien night, and Beatrice waited. The first course had been served, and the main dish was yet to come. 667 words. The bridal chamber was a symphony of alien opulence, a space designed to overwhelm the senses. Bioluminescent plants pulsed with an eerie light, casting strange shadows across walls adorned with intricate, geometric patterns. The air hummed with the low thrum of unfamiliar technology, a constant reminder that Beatrice was a stranger in a strange land. The bed, if it could be called that, was a platform of polished obsidian, its surface cool and unyielding. The unsettling decor seemed to whisper of Xyler's arrogance and the power he wielded. Beatrice stood in the center of the room, her human eyes taking in every detail, cataloging each potential advantage and threat. She knew this night would be a turning point, a moment where her carefully laid plans would either take flight or crash and burn. The door hissed open, and Xyler strode in, his posture radiating arrogance. He expected to find Beatrice cowering, intimidated by the alien surroundings and his own imposing presence. He anticipated an easy victory, a swift subjugation of the fat human woman he had so gleefully chosen to humiliate. But the sight that greeted him was anything but what he expected. Beatrice stood tall, her gaze steady and unwavering. There was no fear in her eyes, only a quiet determination that sent a flicker of unease through his carefully constructed facade. "Well, Beatrice," Xyler began, his voice dripping with condescension. "I trust you find your accommodations adequate?" He paused, waiting for a stammered reply, a sign of weakness. But Beatrice remained silent, her expression unreadable. His carefully rehearsed taunts seemed to hang in the air, devoid of their intended impact. He tried again, "Surely you must be overwhelmed by the sheer magnificence of my home, the grandeur of my palace." Beatrice finally spoke, her voice calm and measured, a stark contrast to Xyler's affected tone. "It is certainly different," she said, her eyes scanning the room with a detached curiosity. "Though I confess, I find Earth's natural landscapes far more captivating than these artificial displays." Xyler's eyes narrowed. This wasn't going according to plan. He was supposed to be in control, driving her to tears, solidifying his perception of her as lesser. "You dare compare your primitive world to the splendor of my civilization?" Xyler sneered, his voice laced with venom. "You humans are but a blip on the galactic radar, a species barely out of the Stone Age. And you, Beatrice, are the least desirable of your kind, a pathetic offering to secure a fleeting alliance." Beatrice smiled, a subtle curve of her lips that hinted at amusement. "Is that what you truly believe, Xyler?" she asked, her voice soft but firm. "Or is it merely a convenient fiction to justify your own insecurities?" Xyler recoiled as if struck. His mind raced, what did this fat human woman think she was implying? He had power, prestige, and a position of absolute authority. What was she implying about his own insecurities? "I know far more about your world than you suspect, Xyler," Beatrice continued, her gaze locking with his. "I know of the unrest brewing beneath the surface, the discontent simmering among your people. I know of the power struggles within your court, the alliances shifting like sand in the wind." Xyler's face paled. How could she possibly know these things? These were secrets guarded closely, known only to a select few within his inner circle. He felt a chill run down his spine, a sense of unease that bordered on fear. His carefully constructed joke was unraveling before his eyes, revealing a far more dangerous game than he had ever imagined. "You underestimate me, Xyler," Beatrice warned, her voice filled with quiet conviction. "This marriage may have unforeseen consequences, consequences that you will come to regret." His simple plan to humiliate Earth and to reinforce his ego suddenly felt very precarious. 667 words. Xylar, increasingly unnerved by Beatrice's parting words, couldn't shake the feeling that he had severely miscalculated. He summoned his most trusted advisors, men he'd known since childhood, men who owed him their positions and their loyalty. He presented Beatrice's cryptic warning, carefully omitting his own arrogance and the casual cruelty that had prompted it. He framed it as a matter of national security, a potential threat to his reign. The advisors, sensing his unease, were quick to offer reassurances. They dismissed Beatrice as an insignificant human, a plump, unattractive creature who couldn't possibly pose a real threat. But Xylar, despite their words, couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. He ordered a discreet investigation into the political landscape, focusing on any potential vulnerabilities within his kingdom, specifically those areas Beatrice may have somehow discovered. What he found was deeply troubling. A faction of disgruntled nobles, tired of Xylar's frivolous spending and lack of attention to their concerns, were quietly gathering support. They felt the kingdom's resources were being squandered on extravagant parties and pointless technological advancements, while vital infrastructure and social programs were neglected. They were not yet ready for open rebellion, but the seeds of dissent had been sown. And Beatrice, somehow, knew about it. Further investigation revealed something even more alarming. Beatrice had, through intermediaries, made contact with several influential figures within the alien court, individuals known for their progressive views and their dissatisfaction with Xylar's rule. She had appealed to their sense of justice and fairness, highlighting the plight of the less fortunate and subtly criticizing Xylar's extravagant lifestyle. She hadn't explicitly called for rebellion, but she had planted the seeds of doubt and discontent, fostering an environment ripe for change. Xylar felt a grudging respect for Beatrice begin to bloom, a bitter pill to swallow alongside his rising anger. He still resented her presence, her perceived ugliness, and the fact that she was a human, a species he had always considered inferior. But he could no longer deny her intelligence and her political acumen. He was caught in a web of his own making, a joke that had turned into a serious threat. Then, Beatrice made her move. A crucial vote was coming up in the Royal Council, a decision that would determine the allocation of funds for the next fiscal year. Xylar intended to divert the funds to a pet project, a new racing arena for his personal enjoyment. Beatrice, using her newfound influence and the connections she had cultivated, swayed several key council members to vote against the proposal. The funds were instead allocated to much-needed infrastructure improvements in the outer provinces, a decision that was met with widespread approval by the populace. Xylar was furious. He confronted Beatrice in their private chambers, his voice low and menacing. He accused her of manipulation, of undermining his authority, of betraying him. But Beatrice remained calm, her gaze steady and unwavering. She simply reminded him that she was his wife, and as such, she had a vested interest in the well-being of his kingdom. She had merely used her position to ensure that the resources were allocated in a way that would benefit the most people. And in that moment, Xylar realized the full extent of his folly. He was trapped, not only in a political game he was rapidly losing, but also in a marriage to a woman who was far more intelligent and cunning than he could have ever imagined, and now, he was experiencing both anger and a strange fascination. 667 words. The political unrest within Xylar's kingdom escalated, a slow burn ignited by Beatrice's subtle manipulations, now, threatening to consume everything. It was a delicate dance, a game of shadows where whispers held more power than declarations. The seeds of dissent, carefully sown, were now sprouting into open defiance. The common folk, once blindly loyal to their prince, now questioned his authority, their eyes open to the vast inequalities that permeated their society. Beatrice, the unlikely catalyst, had become a beacon of hope, a symbol of change in a world desperately clinging to tradition. Xylar's advisors, a council of sycophants and self-serving nobles, grew increasingly agitated. They saw Beatrice as a viper in their midst, a foreign influence poisoning the minds of their people. They urged Xylar to take decisive action, to quell the rebellion before it spiraled out of control. Their voices, laced with fear and paranoia, echoed in Xylar's ears, fueling his internal conflict. He was torn between his duty to his kingdom, his ingrained belief in his own superiority, and the undeniable, albeit grudging, admiration he felt for Beatrice's intellect and unwavering resolve. He knew that silencing her would restore order, but it would also extinguish the spark of hope that had begun to flicker in the hearts of his people. Xylar found himself caught in a web of his own making, his initial arrogance blinding him to the true potential of the woman he had so callously chosen as his bride. He had underestimated her, believing her physical appearance to be an accurate reflection of her inner capabilities. Now, he was paying the price for his short-sightedness. Meanwhile, Beatrice's public support continued to grow. She moved with a quiet grace, attending to the needs of the common people, listening to their grievances, and offering solutions that were both practical and compassionate. She didn't seek power for herself, but rather sought to empower those who had been marginalized and oppressed. She spoke of equality, of justice, and of a future where every citizen would have a voice. Her words resonated with the masses, who saw in her a champion, a savior who had arrived to deliver them from their suffering. In a move that sent shockwaves through the kingdom, Beatrice formed a dangerous alliance with a rebel faction, a group of dissidents who had long been plotting to overthrow Xylar's rule. This alliance was a risky gamble, one that could easily backfire and lead to her own demise. But Beatrice was willing to take that risk, knowing that it was the only way to bring about meaningful change. She saw in the rebels a raw, untamed force that, when guided with wisdom and compassion, could be a powerful catalyst for positive transformation. Xylar, witnessing the unraveling of his kingdom, made a desperate attempt to regain control of the situation. He issued decrees, made promises, and even offered concessions, but his efforts were met with skepticism and resistance. The people had lost faith in him, their trust irrevocably broken. Every move he made was anticipated and countered by Beatrice's clever planning, her intricate web of influence reaching into every corner of the kingdom. He felt like a puppet, his strings being pulled by an unseen force, his every action dictated by Beatrice's subtle manipulations. The joke he had intended to play had backfired spectacularly, leaving him teetering on the brink of ruin. The prince was no longer in control. Word count, 667. The political unrest had finally shattered the delicate facade of Xylar's kingdom, erupting into open rebellion. The simmering discontent, carefully stoked by Beatrice's subtle manipulations, had boiled over into a raging inferno that threatened to consume everything. Xylar, once the absolute ruler, watched in bewildered horror as his world crumbled around him. The opulent palace, once a symbol of his power, now felt like a gilded cage, trapping him within the confines of his own crumbling authority. The rebellion spread like wildfire, consuming city after city, planet after planet. Xylar's carefully constructed image of invincibility shattered, revealing the weakness and corruption that lay beneath. The people, emboldened by Beatrice's quiet strength and the promise of a better future, rose up against their oppressor. They were no longer afraid, no longer willing to tolerate the decadence and cruelty of Xylar's reign. Xylar's loss of control was swift and brutal. His army, once loyal and disciplined, was now fractured, divided by conflicting loyalties and simmering resentment. His advisors, once eager to please, now whispered amongst themselves, plotting their own survival in the face of the impending chaos. He tried to rally them, to remind them of their oaths, but his words rang hollow, devoid of the power they once held. The very foundations of his authority had been eroded, leaving him standing on shifting sands. Beatrice, meanwhile, emerged as the unlikely leader of the rebellion. Her quiet strength, her unwavering resolve, and her sharp strategic mind captivated the hearts and minds of the people. She spoke of justice, of equality, of a future where everyone, regardless of their appearance or origin, could live with dignity and respect. Her words resonated with the oppressed and the marginalized, inspiring them to fight for a cause greater than themselves. She wasn't physically imposing, no warrior or general, but her intellect and sheer force of will made her a beacon of hope. A key victory, orchestrated by Beatrice's strategic brilliance, shifted the balance of power decisively in her favor. She had anticipated Xylar's every move, predicting his strategies and countering them with flawless precision. The rebels, energized by their success, surged forward, pushing back the royalist forces and seizing control of vital territories. The tide had turned, and the momentum was now firmly on Beatrice's side. It was becoming clear that Xylar's reign was coming to an end. Xylar found himself increasingly isolated, cut off from his allies and betrayed by his own people. His grand palace felt more like a prison than a sanctuary. The whispers of dissent grew louder, the glares of contempt more frequent. He was alone, outmaneuvered by his wife, the woman he had intended to humiliate. The irony was bitter, a cruel twist of fate that he could never have foreseen. He had underestimated Beatrice, blinded by his arrogance and his prejudice. The tables had turned completely. Xylar, the arrogant prince, was now at Beatrice's mercy. His kingdom was in ruins, his power was gone, and his reputation was shattered. He had become a prisoner in his own palace, awaiting the inevitable consequences of his actions. The game he had started as a joke had spiraled out of control, leading him to this devastating moment of reckoning. He never imagined that his cruel jest would result in such a dramatic shift in power, a complete reversal of fortune that left him utterly defeated. He could only wait for the inevitable, knowing that his fate rested entirely in the hands of the fat human woman he had so foolishly underestimated. He had sown the wind, and now he was reaping the whirlwind. 667 words. Xylar was yanked roughly forward, the metallic grip of the rebel guards digging into his arms. He stumbled, his once pristine royal robes now torn and stained with the grime of his capture. The Grand Hall, where he had once held court, was now filled with a throng of angry citizens, their faces a mixture of resentment and triumph. At the head of the hall, seated on a makeshift throne fashioned from salvaged materials, was Beatrice. She radiated an undeniable aura of power, her gaze sharp and unwavering as it met his. The arrogance that had defined Xylar's every move had completely evaporated, replaced by a hollow fear he could barely contain. He swallowed, his throat dry, as he was forced to kneel before the woman he had so callously intended to humiliate. The irony was a bitter pill to swallow, a stark reminder of his monumental misjudgment. 134. Beatrice surveyed him with a cold detachment, her expression betraying none of the emotions he desperately hoped to see, pity, perhaps, or even a flicker of the affection he now realized he should have fostered. He had treated her like a pawn in his cruel game, never imagining she possessed the intelligence and strength to turn the tables so decisively. Now, he was completely at her mercy, his fate hanging precariously in the balance. The cheers of the crowd echoed around him, a deafening chorus of disapproval and condemnation. He had been so blinded by his own privilege and prejudice that he had failed to see the simmering discontent beneath the surface of his kingdom. Beatrice had not only seen it, but she had expertly stoked the flames of rebellion, leading her people to overthrow his corrupt regime. 257. Xylar, Beatrice began, her voice resonating with authority, you stand accused of treason, corruption, and the systematic oppression of your people. Each word was a carefully aimed dart, piercing through the remnants of his pride. He wanted to protest, to defend himself, but the weight of his guilt was crushing. He had squandered his power, abused his position, and treated his subjects with utter contempt. He had reaped what he had sown, and now he was facing the consequences. The faces in the crowd were a tapestry of suffering, each one a testament to his failures as a ruler. He had ignored their pleas, dismissed their concerns, and reveled in his own superiority. He had been a tyrant, and now his reign was over. 377. He managed a weak, desperate plea. Beatrice, I beg you, have mercy. I was wrong, I admit it. I was blinded by arrogance and ignorance. But I can change. I can learn from my mistakes. His words sounded hollow, even to his own ears. He knew he didn't deserve her forgiveness, but he clung to the hope that somewhere beneath her steely exterior, there might be a shred of compassion. But Beatrice's expression remained unchanged. Mercy? She echoed, her voice laced with scorn. Did you show mercy to those you oppressed? Did you consider the suffering of those you deemed unworthy? She gestured to the crowd, her eyes sweeping across their faces. These are the people you wronged, Xylar. These are the people you dismissed as insignificant. They are the ones who will decide your fate. 495. Beatrice turned to address the crowd, her voice ringing with conviction. People of Xylas, for generations you have endured the tyranny of this man and his ancestors. They have exploited your resources, suppressed your voices, and treated you as if you were nothing more than pawns in their games. Now, the time has come for justice. What shall we do with Xylar, the fallen prince? A roar erupted from the crowd, a cacophony of anger and resentment. The words trial and punishment were repeated over and over, a clear indication of their desire for retribution. Xylar flinched, bracing himself for the inevitable. He knew that he deserved whatever fate awaited him. He had brought this upon himself with his own actions. As Beatrice announced the details of his public trial, a wave of shame washed over him, eclipsing even his fear. He had not only failed his people, but he had also failed himself. He had become the very thing he had always despised, a cruel and arrogant tyrant. 667. With Xylar subdued, Beatrice began the arduous task of reshaping the kingdom. The ingrained inequalities and injustices that had festered for generations demanded immediate attention. Her first act was to dismantle the existing power structures, replacing them with a council of representatives elected from all levels of society. No longer would decisions be made solely by the elite, every voice would be heard, every citizen valued. She implemented policies to ensure equal access to education, healthcare, and resources, regardless of physical appearance or social standing. It was a radical departure from the past, and resistance was inevitable, but Beatrice was unwavering in her commitment. She understood that true change required more than just laws and policies. It demanded a shift in cultural attitudes, a rejection of the superficial standards that had defined the alien society for so long. She launched public awareness campaigns, promoting acceptance and celebrating diversity. Artists, writers, and educators joined her cause, creating works that challenged conventional notions of beauty and worth. Slowly but surely, the seeds of a more enlightened society began to sprout. The Earth government, initially hesitant about Beatrice's methods, watched with growing admiration. The alliance between Earth and Xylar's planet, once a fragile political arrangement, was now strengthened by a shared commitment to progress and justice. Earth began to offer its expertise in various fields, assisting in the development of sustainable technologies and equitable economic systems. The exchange of knowledge and resources fostered a deeper understanding and cooperation between the two species. Beatrice's popularity soared among the alien population. They saw her not just as a ruler, but as a champion, a beacon of hope in a world that had long been shrouded in darkness. She possessed a rare combination of intelligence, compassion, and unwavering resolve. She listened to their concerns, addressed their needs, and inspired them to believe in a better future. Even those who had initially mocked and scorned her now recognized her extraordinary qualities. Her story became a legend, a testament to the power of courage, perseverance, and the transformative potential of love and acceptance. She proved that true strength lies not in physical prowess or social status, but in the ability to challenge injustice and create a more equitable world. She was living proof that even the most unlikely of heroes can rise to greatness, that even a joke can blossom into a revolution. Beatrice became a symbol, not just for the people of Xylar's planet, but for oppressed and marginalized communities throughout the galaxy. Her triumph served as a reminder that no matter how daunting the odds, hope remains a powerful weapon. The era of cruelty and arrogance was over. The new order, forged in the fires of rebellion and tempered by the wisdom of a fat human woman, had begun. The joke, as Xylar once perceived it, had vanished, replaced by the dawn of a new age. 668 words. Xylar was banished. The decree, delivered with chilling formality, echoed through the once familiar halls of his palace, now alien territory. He was stripped of his title, his privileges, everything that had defined him. He was no longer Prince Xylar, heir to a vast interstellar empire, but simply Xylar, a disgraced exile. His destination, the lower sectors, the sprawling, polluted districts where the common people toiled, their lives a stark contrast to the gilded existence he had always known. The journey was a brutal awakening. The sleek, private transports he was accustomed to were replaced by crowded, dilapidated shuttles. The respectful deference of his guards was gone, replaced by indifferent stares and curt commands. He was thrust into a world of grime, noise, and desperation, a world he had deliberately ignored for his entire life. The opulent silks and jewels he once wore were exchanged for rough-spun fabrics that chafed against his skin. The carefully cultivated scent he favored was overwhelmed by the stench of industrial waste and unwashed bodies. His initial reaction was one of disgust and resentment. He saw the poverty, the overcrowding, the sheer hopelessness in the eyes of the people, and he blamed them. He saw their struggles as a reflection of their own inadequacies, a justification for the privileged life he had led. But as the days turned into weeks, something began to shift within him. He was forced to work alongside these people, to share their hardships, to witness their resilience in the face of adversity. He saw families struggling to make ends meet, parents sacrificing everything for their children, communities banding together to support one another. He began to learn their names, to hear their stories. He learned of the injustices they faced, the corruption that permeated the system, the indifference of the ruling elite. He saw the consequences of his own arrogance and ignorance, the suffering he had indirectly caused. The weight of his past actions began to crush him, a burden far heavier than any he had ever carried as a prince. Slowly, painfully, Xylar began to understand the error of his ways. The scales fell from his eyes, revealing the true value of compassion, empathy, and humility. He started using his knowledge and skills, honed by years of privilege, to help those around him. He organized community projects, mediated disputes, and advocated for better living conditions. He wasn't seeking forgiveness or redemption, but simply trying to make amends for the wrongs he had committed. Beatrice, meanwhile, observed his transformation from afar. She had spies and informants throughout the lower sectors, keeping her apprised of Xylar's progress. She saw his genuine remorse, his unwavering commitment to service, his growing respect for the common people. She recognized that he was no longer the arrogant, callous prince she had married, but a changed man, humbled by experience and driven by a desire to do good. The decision weighed heavily on her. Could she truly trust him? Could she forgive him for his past transgressions? Was it possible for a leopard to change its spots? But she also knew that Xylar possessed unique insights and abilities that could be invaluable in rebuilding the kingdom. He understood the intricacies of the old power structures, the flaws in the system that had led to so much suffering. And perhaps, more importantly, he had learned the true meaning of leadership, the responsibility that came with power. After months of careful consideration, Beatrice sent for Xyler. The summons was delivered not with the pomp and ceremony of his former life, but with a simple, handwritten note. It was an invitation, not a command. She asked him to return to the palace, not as a prince, but as a servant of the people. She offered him a second chance, an opportunity to use his newfound wisdom and compassion to help her create a better future for all. It was a gamble, a risk that could backfire spectacularly. But Beatrice believed in the power of redemption, in the capacity for even the most hardened hearts to change. She knew that the future of her kingdom depended on it. Beatrice and Xyler began their unlikely partnership cautiously, like dancers testing the waters of a new routine. The scars of their past animosity were still visible, not as open wounds, but as faint lines that reminded them of the pain they had inflicted upon each other. Their first collaboration was a project to redistribute resources to the lower sectors of Xyler's kingdom, areas that had long suffered from neglect and exploitation. Beatrice, with her understanding of human social structures and her innate sense of fairness, proposed innovative solutions that challenged the old, ingrained systems of inequality. Xyler, drawing upon his knowledge of the alien technology and infrastructure, found ways to implement these solutions efficiently and effectively. Slowly, they began to find a rhythm, their individual strengths complementing each other. Beatrice's empathy tempered Xyler's sometimes cold pragmatism, while Xyler's strategic thinking helped Beatrice navigate the complexities of alien politics. They discovered that their shared vision for the future, one built on equality, justice, and mutual respect, was stronger than their past differences. It wasn't about erasing what had happened, but about using that experience to build something better, something lasting. As they worked together, a deep respect blossomed between them. Xyler began to see Beatrice not as the fat human woman he had once cruelly mocked, but as a brilliant and compassionate leader, a force for positive change in his kingdom. He learned to appreciate her sharp intellect, her unwavering integrity, and her fierce determination to fight for what was right. Beatrice, in turn, recognized Xyler's genuine remorse and his commitment to making amends for his past actions. She saw the potential for good within him, a potential that had been buried beneath layers of arrogance and privilege. She understood that true growth came from acknowledging one's flaws and striving to overcome them. Their alliance extended beyond mere political convenience. It became a genuine partnership built on mutual trust and admiration. They began to confide in each other, sharing their hopes, fears, and dreams for the future. Xyler, once isolated by his position and his own arrogance, found solace in Beatrice's unwavering support. Beatrice, who had always felt like an outsider in Xyler's world, found a sense of belonging and acceptance. Xyler became a vocal advocate for human rights and equality, using his influence to challenge prejudice and discrimination within his kingdom and beyond. He spoke out against the dehumanizing stereotypes that had once blinded him, sharing his own story of transformation as a testament to the power of empathy and understanding. His advocacy extended to advocating for fair trade agreements with Earth, ensuring that both species benefited equally from their partnership. He pushed for cultural exchange programs, fostering a greater understanding and appreciation between humans and his species. Beatrice, seeing Xyler's genuine commitment to change, placed her trust in him completely. She knew that he was no longer the arrogant prince who had once seen her as a joke, but a true ally and a valuable partner in her efforts to create a better world. She delegated responsibilities to him, empowering him to make important decisions and trusting his judgment. Their collaboration became a symbol of hope, a testament to the power of forgiveness, and a beacon of light in a galaxy often shrouded in darkness. Their unlikely partnership was a powerful force, a testament to the fact that even the most disparate individuals can come together to achieve great things. 667 words. A new and powerful enemy emerged from beyond the galaxy, a threat unlike any Beatrice or Xyler had ever encountered. Whispers of a relentless force, driven by an insatiable hunger for conquest, had begun to circulate through the intergalactic networks. These were not mere raiders or pirates, but a highly organized and technologically advanced civilization known as the Krill. Their ships were said to be immense, their weapons devastating, and their cruelty unmatched. Their sole purpose was to assimilate entire planets, stripping them of their resources and enslaving their populations. An impending invasion loomed, casting a long shadow over Xyler's planet and the surrounding systems. Scouts reported a massive Krill invasion fleet rapidly approaching, its numbers seemingly endless. Panic gripped the population as news of the impending doom spread like wildfire. Many called for immediate surrender, believing resistance to be futile. But Beatrice, ever the beacon of hope, refused to yield. She knew that surrender meant certain enslavement and the destruction of everything they had fought so hard to achieve. Beatrice rallied her people, reminding them of their resilience, their courage, and their unwavering spirit. She spoke of the values they held dear: freedom, equality, and justice, and declared that they would not allow the Krill to extinguish the flame of hope that had been ignited on their world. She called upon every citizen, regardless of their background or abilities, to stand together and defend their home. Xylar, drawing upon his knowledge of alien technology and tactics, worked tirelessly to develop a strategic defense plan. He analyzed the Krill's weaknesses, identified key strategic locations, and devised innovative countermeasures to neutralize their superior firepower. He knew that they were outmatched in terms of resources and manpower, but he believed that with ingenuity, determination, and a united front, they could stand a chance. An unlikely alliance was forged, once again uniting disparate alien species against a common enemy. Representatives from neighboring star systems, inspired by Beatrice's unwavering resolve and Xylar's strategic brilliance, pledged their support and committed their forces to the defense of Xylar's planet. They recognized that the Krill posed a threat to the entire galaxy and that their survival depended on standing together. The combined forces of Beatrice's kingdom and their allies prepared for a desperate battle, knowing that the fate of their world, and perhaps the galaxy, hung in the balance. They fortified their defenses, trained their soldiers, and stockpiled resources, bracing themselves for the onslaught that was to come. Fear and uncertainty lingered in the air, but beneath it all was a glimmer of hope, a belief that they could overcome even the most daunting odds and emerge victorious. The stage was set for a clash that would determine the destiny of their world, a battle for freedom against the encroaching darkness of the Krill. The fate of the galaxy rested on their shoulders, an enormous burden to bear, but one they were prepared to face head-on. 667 words. The invasion began with a deafening roar that ripped through the atmosphere. Xylar's planet, once a jewel of the galaxy, was now engulfed in a brutal and destructive war. The sky, once a serene canvas of swirling nebulae, was now choked with the black smoke of burning cities and the crimson trails of energy weapons. Panic seized the populace, their initial bravado replaced by stark fear as the invaders, a relentless horde of insectoid warriors, descended from the heavens. They were a terrifying sight, their chitinous armor glinting menacingly under the alien sun, their mandibles snapping with anticipation of the carnage to come. Beatrice, however, stood firm. She had anticipated this moment, prepared for this onslaught. Gone was the unassuming figure that Xylar had initially mocked. Now, she was a warrior queen, her eyes blazing with determination, her voice ringing with unwavering resolve. She led her troops into battle, not from a safe distance, but from the front lines, her presence a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. She wielded a plasma rifle with deadly accuracy, each shot a testament to her newfound skills, each fallen enemy a symbol of her defiance. The human spirit, underestimated for so long, now shone brightly on this alien battlefield. Xylar, meanwhile, was a whirlwind of tactical genius. He had spent countless hours studying the enemy's technology, their formations, their weaknesses. He knew this battleground better than they did, and he used that knowledge to his advantage. He directed the defense from a mobile command center, relaying orders with calm precision, anticipating the enemy's every move. He deployed his forces with strategic brilliance, setting traps, creating diversions, and exploiting every vulnerability in the enemy lines. He was no longer the frivolous prince, but a seasoned commander, his mind sharp, his decisions decisive. He was fighting for his people, for his planet, and for the woman who had shown him the true meaning of leadership. The battle raged on, a desperate struggle for survival. The invaders were relentless, their numbers seemingly endless. They pressed their attack with savage ferocity, overwhelming the defenders in certain sectors, pushing them back towards the capital city. The casualties mounted on both sides, the ground littered with the bodies of fallen soldiers, the air thick with the stench of blood and burning metal. Hope dwindled as the hours turned into days, and the defenders began to tire. Then, a crucial turning point occurred. Beatrice, fighting alongside her troops in the thick of the battle, noticed a weakness in the enemy's flagship, a vulnerable energy conduit that could cripple their entire fleet. She relayed this information to Xylar, who immediately devised a plan. Together, they coordinated a daring assault, a suicide mission that would either break the enemy's back or seal their doom. Beatrice, leading a small team of elite warriors, infiltrated the flagship under the cover of darkness. Xylar, meanwhile, launched a diversionary attack, drawing the enemy's attention away from Beatrice's team. Beatrice and her team fought their way through the flagship, overcoming wave after wave of enemy soldiers. They reached the energy conduit and planted a series of explosive charges. With seconds to spare, they escaped the flagship before the charges detonated. The resulting explosion ripped through the flagship, disabling its weapons systems and crippling its engines. The enemy fleet, thrown into disarray, began to falter. Seeing their flagship destroyed and their forces in retreat, the invaders lost their morale. The fierce resistance put up by Beatrice and Xylar's combined forces had taken its toll. The enemy forces, demoralized by the loss of their flagship and the relentless onslaught of the defenders, began to retreat, fleeing back into the darkness from whence they came. The tide had turned. The tide had turned. Xylar's planet, once teetering on the brink of subjugation, was now free. But the celebrations were bittersweet, a symphony of joy played on instruments of sorrow. Every cheer was laced with the memory of fallen comrades, every flag wave a reminder of the sacrifices made. The grand squares, once echoing with the march of invaders, now throbbed with the rhythm of life rediscovered, a defiant pulse against the shadow of what had almost been. The air, still acrid with the scent of burnt metal and alien fire, carried the weight of collective grief, a palpable burden shared by every citizen. Beatrice and Xylar stood together on the balcony of the palace, the same balcony from which he had once surveyed his kingdom with arrogant disdain. Now, he stood beside her, a humbled man, his gaze reflecting not pride, but a profound sense of responsibility. The cheers of the crowd washed over them, a wave of gratitude directed at the unlikely saviors who had led them through the darkest of times. Beatrice, the fat human woman who was supposed to be a joke, and Xylar, the alien prince who had started it all with a twisted sense of humor. The accolades poured in, medals were presented, speeches were given. Yet, amidst the fanfare, Beatrice and Xylar found solace in quiet moments, sharing knowing glances that spoke volumes. They had seen the best and worst of each other, forged a bond in the crucible of war, and emerged as something more than just allies. They were partners, united by a shared purpose and a mutual respect born of adversity. The war had stripped away the superficial, revealing the true essence of their characters, the strength of their convictions, and the depth of their compassion. The victory celebrations stretched on for days, a cathartic release of pent-up fear and anxiety. The people of Xylar's planet danced, sang, and feasted, celebrating not only their freedom but also the newfound unity that had emerged from the ashes of conflict. They honored their fallen heroes, remembered their sacrifices, and vowed to never forget the lessons they had learned. The planet was scarred, wounded, but not broken. It was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the capacity for hope in the face of despair, and the power of unity in the face of adversity. 667 words. The story of Beatrice and Xylar serves as a powerful reminder that true beauty transcends physical appearances. In a universe often obsessed with superficiality, Beatrice's journey proves that intelligence, compassion, and unwavering courage are the qualities that truly define a person's worth. Her sharp wit and strategic mind, initially dismissed because of her appearance, ultimately saved a kingdom and reshaped intergalactic relations. The tale challenges us to look beyond the surface and recognize the inherent value in every individual, regardless of societal standards or prejudiced perceptions. Prejudice, a pervasive force throughout the galaxy, was a significant obstacle for Beatrice. Xylar's initial disdain stemmed from a narrow-minded view of humanity, fueled by his own species' superficial ideals. However, Beatrice's actions chipped away at this prejudice, proving that preconceived notions are often inaccurate and harmful. By embracing diversity and challenging ingrained biases, societies can unlock the potential of individuals from all walks of life. This story urges us to actively combat prejudice in our own lives and to celebrate the richness that diversity brings. Xylar's transformation embodies the power of second chances and the possibility of redemption. He began as an arrogant and cruel prince, blinded by privilege and contemptuous of those he deemed inferior. Yet, through hardship and self-reflection, he realized the error of his ways. Beatrice's willingness to offer him a second chance allowed him to use his knowledge and skills for good, ultimately contributing to a more just and equitable society. This emphasizes the importance of forgiveness and the belief that individuals are capable of change, even after making significant mistakes. The alliance between Beatrice, an Earth woman initially perceived as undesirable, and Xylar, a formerly arrogant alien prince, showcases the strength of unlikely partnerships. Their collaboration, born out of necessity and mutual respect, allowed them to overcome challenges that neither could have faced alone. It underscores the idea that differences can be a source of strength and that working together, regardless of background or origin, can lead to remarkable achievements. This should inspire people to seek out connections with those who are different from them, and to understand the power that lies in unity. The impact of Beatrice's story extends far beyond the borders of Xylar's planet. Her legacy as a champion of freedom, equality, and compassion continues to inspire generations across the galaxy. She proved that one person, armed with intelligence and determination, can make a difference, even when faced with seemingly insurmountable odds. Her journey serves as a beacon of hope, reminding everyone that they have the power to create positive change in the world, regardless of their circumstances. Her story emphasizes the importance of individual action and the belief that even small acts of kindness and courage can have a ripple effect, transforming lives and shaping the future. If you found Beatrice's journey inspiring, subscribe to our channel for more stories of bravery, unlikely heroes, and overcoming adversity in strange new worlds. And be sure to click on the suggested video for another incredible tale that will expand your mind and warm your heart. 669 words.